This episode is brought to you by Progressive Insurance. Fiscally responsible, financial geniuses, monetary magicians. These are things people say about drivers who switch their car insurance to Progressive and save hundreds. Visit Progressive.com to see if you could save. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and Affiliates. Potential savings will vary, not available in all states or situations.
EVO.
This series contains adult language and depictions of graphic violence. Listener discretion is advised.
Yes, I am evil. Not 100%, but I am evil. Evil has always existed. The perfect world most people seek shall never come to pass. We've gained the courage to rebaptize our evil qualities as being our best qualities.
You killed 7 men.
Yes, you
did.
And
I'm asking you, what got you to kill the 7 men?
And I'm telling you, because the cops let me keep killing them, Nick. Don't you get it?
I don't believe in hitting children. I don't believe in... My values are such that if you give enough love to the children...
You're accused of murdering 33 kids, and you say you didn't believe in hitting.
So that was Richard Ramirez, the Night Stalker, and Eileen Wuornos, both serial killers that we're going to talk about later on in the show.
The last clip you heard was John Wayne Gacy, who killed 33 young men and women. Here he is again with his thoughts on some other famous serial killers.
What do I think of Jeffrey Dahmer? I don't know the man personally, but I'll tell you this. That's a good example as to why insanity doesn't belong in a courtroom.
I was branching out. That's when the cannibalism started, eating of the heart. It was a way of making me feel that they were a part of me.
Whether it's Berkowitz.
I never knew that I was going to become a murderer. I was looking for some fun or whatever. You know, I was bored. I was lonely, like a madman on the loose type thing, just to bring some chaos.
Whether it's Bundy.
I'm not guilty.
Whether it's Wayne Williams down in Atlanta or Charlie Manson. See.
Believe me, if I started murdering people, there'd be none of you left.
Well, that was creepy and very funny at the end. The rock stars of serial killing. Usually we open up when I ask you a question like, hey, Jeff, you ever wear sneakers or
ever ride a motorcycle?
You have a watch? Jeff, you ever killed anyone?
No.
Not this week anyway. So, Jeff, why are we talking about serial killers today?
Well, because it's always fun to talk about serial killers. Yep. But today we're going to focus on a specific kind of serial killer.
Hi, I'm Bruce.
And I'm Jeff. Welcome to Taboo Treasures, a weekly podcast that explores the human obsession with gathering and collecting not just objects of value, but objects of extreme rarity and infamy.
Today's episode, Murderabilia, Collecting the Collectors. Who is the first serial killer? Well, his name was Gilles de Rais, who fought alongside Joan of Arc in 1492 and became the Marshal of France, which is France's highest military achievement. In 1433, he got, wait for it, religion. Yep. So he financed a chapel he called the Chapel of the Holy Innocents, oh God, and staffed it with a hand-picked boys' choir. We all know what happens with boys' choirs, don't we?
Right. So even when kids started to go missing, and even when witnesses saw servants disposing of dozens of, kids, their bodies, the families were too scared to do anything. So he didn't even get caught until he kidnapped a priest in 1440, and then he was tried for a whole bunch of other stuff, including heresy and sodomy, and also the murder of more than 100 kids. But
nice guy.
Yeah. So he confessed. He was sentenced to death by burning and hanging, which probably, I guess that would take some careful planning. But before he died, he was contrite. So in other words, he said sorry. So he got posthumous acclaim for being a model Christian. You just can't make this shit up.
And one last horrible irony, a tradition emerged. Parents in the area started commemorating the anniversary of de Rais' execution by whipping their children, as one does. No one's sure why this happened, and we're not asking, but parents kept this up for more than 100 years. De Rais was the first, but the most famous serial killer in history has to be Jack the Ripper. If you aren't up on your serial killers, Jack the Ripper's stomping grounds was an area of London called Whitechapel. Whitechapel was a real shithole in 1888. It was swarming with all kinds of criminals and crimes. It was filthy and violent, and that made it a perfect choice for a killer to blend in. And it's where his victims lived and worked, prostitutes.
His MO was really gruesome. He cut their throats, cut off their genitals, mutilated their faces, pulled out their organs, and obviously forensics in those days was pretty much non-existent. So all the authorities really had to go on was eyewitness and other unreliable sources. They questioned hundreds of suspects and had to go through hundreds more who confessed, but all of them turned out to be lying.
Despite public and police obsession with finding him, despite all the investigations and interviews and documentaries and books over more than 130 years, no one's been definitely identified as Jack the Ripper.
He wasn't only really good at being a serial killer either. The Whitechapel murders created the very first media frenzy in history. And of course the media in those days was limited to, a town crier basically, because very few people read newspapers. But hardly a day went by when he wasn't the subject of articles in the broadsheets and tabloids. The name Jack the Ripper actually originated in a letter that someone wrote claiming to be him that the press got a hold of. The letter was considered a hoax, and it may have been written by journalists for what we'd call clickbait today, which is pretty interesting. So the public came to believe in the existence of a single serial killer known as Jack the Ripper because of how brutal the murders were. But media coverage is the thing that made it a worldwide phenomenon.
Women in London, particularly in the East End, lived in terror. And in a few minutes we'll come to a modern-day killer who had the residents of New York in a similar panic. So the 1970s through about 2000 was considered the golden age of serial murder. I'm not sure why they came up with that, but golden age is cool, I guess. Yeah. The golden age of serial killers refers to when there was a noticeable rise in serial killing in the United States.
Some of the most well-known serial killers who operated during this period, you've probably heard of all of them. Ted Bundy, John Wayne Gacy, Jeffrey Dahmer, the Zodiac Killer, Son of Sam, and there are lots of others.
All the rock stars.
All the rock stars. But what do you think caused it, the golden age?
I mean, we've read a bunch of stuff, urbanization. There was people living on top of each other, so it would be easy to kill people.
Yeah.
Post-war era, significant changes in society.
Yeah, I guess in the 70s we started seeing things like, we always had broken families, but I don't know, mental health and trauma stuff was being diagnosed more, I guess.
There's no real scientific facts here, but...
No. One of the funny ones that we saw was the easy access to True Detective and men's kind of adventure magazines.
Which is so weird.
First of all, okay, I just read a true crime magazine. Now I'm going to go, kill some dogs and then murder some people.
Right.
It doesn't.
Then there was a decline.
Yeah.
From the 90s to 2000s, there was a decline.
Yeah, and the reasons for the decline they're not really any more conclusive than.
The only one I think that's conclusive is crack.
Yeah, they say the prevalence of crack led to less serial killers because
they were high on crack and they didn't care.
Exactly. And then
parole.
One of the things that actually makes some sense is that parole was easier.
Yeah.
Forensics got better.
Right.
But some of them are kind of like more jail.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
More careful behavior by the public.
I don't see a bunch of people looking over their shoulders for Jack the Ripper in 1990.
All right, so if we were going to make a serial killer stew, okay, what would be in the serial killer stew?
first thing would be a dash of bedwetting beyond the age of 12.
And
some bizarre thing.
And an ounce of average IQ.
Yeah, which is really
strange
because, well, I mean, it makes sense. You're fucking idiots running around killing people and getting caught.
But it's like they always portray them in the movies we've seen as these kind of brilliant, kind of Hannibal Lecter people.
And Kevin Spacey in Seven, and you're just fucking idiots.
2 scoops of bullying?
Yeah, a lot of people get bullied. Actually, now you think about it, there's
more cyberbullying now. Where's all the serial killers?
Well, the school shooters.
Yeah.
Those kids are almost all of them have been bullied in one way.
But we don't talk about school shooting.
No, we don't.
We don't.
Then the usual, a dash of
parental
abuse and alcoholism.
Animal torture.
Which is kind of interesting because apparently a lot of them do start out small. They enjoy killing living things, but then they graduate. It's sort of like dogs are a gateway drug to people.
And then sprinkle an extra chromosome here or there. So there's your Serial Killer Stew by Bruce and Jeff.
One thing almost all serial killers have in common is that they don't have accomplices. They're all loners. There are some exceptions, but we learned one really nasty one from the early 80s. They're called the Ripper Crew.
The Ripper Crew, or the Chicago Rippers, stand out from the usual serial killers because it was an organized crime group of serial killers, cannibals, rapists, and necrophiles. There have been other groups of killers like the Manson family, but as fucked up as they were, they had a manifesto mixed in with their antics. There were 4 members, Robin Gick, Edward Spritzer, and the brothers Andrew and Thomas Kokoralis. They were suspected in the murders of 17 women in Illinois in 1981 and 1982, plus the unrelated fatal shooting of a man in a random drive-by shooting.
After they killed the women, they'd mutilate their bodies. One of their signature moves was cutting off the victim's left breast. So to sum up, murder them, rape them in that order, cut them up, and eat them.
Yum. According to one detective who investigated the case, he said they made Manson look like a Boy Scout. There may not be as many female serial killers as men, but they are just as good at the killings.
Yeah, and the first female serial killer we want to talk about is the one who you heard in the intro, Eileen Wuornos. She's sort of the superstar of female serial killers. She was a prostitute in Florida who murdered 7 Johns in 1989 through 1990. There have been documentaries about her and all that, but her main claim to fame, other than being a serial killer, was a movie called Monster. And to be honest, it seems a little unfair to me because Charlize Theron got the Best Actress Oscar for playing her, but Wuornos didn't even get nominated for Best Female Serial Killer.
Next on our list is Belle Gunness. She killed more than 40 people in the late 19th century and the early 20th century. First, her husband and some of her children died under mysterious circumstances. And when she began dating again, her boyfriend started dying too.
Mysterious.
Very mysterious. In April of 1908, she actually managed to get the last laugh when her home burned down. They found the bodies of her children next to a headless corpse under the wreckage and assumed the corpse was Gunness. But it didn't match her actual figure, so she was declared missing. Plenty of corpses were dug up, but she was never found.
And one of my favorites, Jane Toppin, started a killing spree in 1885 when she was training to be a nurse. She experimented on patients using different combinations of medicines and chemicals so she could tweak their nervous systems and slide them between life and death.
Like a flatliner.
Exactly.
Yeah.
She kept getting away with it, and when she opened up a private practice, she kept at it by killing her landlords and her foster sister. Eventually, she was charged with multiple murders, but she was found not guilty on the grounds of insanity. And this is what makes her one of my favorites. Maybe the fact that she was sexually aroused by the murders pushed it over the crazy finish line.
Well, I'm not sure if Velma Barfield was sexually aroused, but she poisoned her boyfriend slowly with arsenic for his money and then confessed to killing her mother in the same way.
It's because she wasn't sexually aroused.
That's right. She killed 5 people altogether, but she gets a special mention for being the first woman who was executed in the U.S. after the death penalty was reinstated in 1977. But she spent so much time on death row That she what, Jeff?
She found religion.
Yes, became a devout Christian. Better late than never, but now she's forgiven.
Yeah, it was a little too late.
Yes.
Okay, back to our gals. Jean Weber was a woman who killed herself in prison at only 36 around the turn of the 20th century, but she packed a whole lot of killing into her short life. It's amazing how much she got away with before she was eventually caught. Those are the good old days in serial killing when you know forensics. So she started her career by murdering her sister's children, but they called it an accident because she played the distraught woman card. Then she got away with trying to choke her nephew to death because they said, get this, she was distraught over the death of her own child, who she killed. Eventually, he was charged with murder, and in 1910, she hung herself in an insane asylum. Jesus, happy stories.
Copycat murders are murders committed in a way that was already established by a previous murder committed by another person. Some people say the term started in 1912 with the intense media coverage of the Jack the Ripper murders. The media has taken a lot of blame for breeding all kinds of violence, and copycats are a big one. If you were born after about 1970, you probably take it for granted that just about every product on every shelf has a plastic seal on it. But before 1982, there was basically no such thing as a tamper-proof seal. You can open anything from food to medicine to toiletries on every shelf. It's one of the last great reminders of the death of the honor system. In 1982, 7 people died after taking Tylenol that was laced with cyanide. 4 years later, 2 more people died at the hands of a copycat. No one was ever caught, and over the years, copycats killed several more people with poisoned medicines.
The FDA's requirement that everything be in tamper-resistant packaging is actually the direct result of the original killer and the copycats, so thanks a lot. As Bruce mentioned, you also killed one of the last vestiges of the honor system in the United States.
No, you know the only thing that kills a demon? Love. That's why I know that Mallory's my salvation. She was teaching me how to love.
I forgive you, baby.
Yeah. It was just like being in the Garden of Eden.
Yeah, no movie has inspired more copycat killers than the 1994 Oliver Stone movie Natural Born Killers. It's loosely based on a pair of teenage spree killers in 1957 and 58. Charles Starkweather and Carol Ann Fugate. Ironically, the movie discusses a glorification of violence in the American media. It also has the bizarre status of accidentally creating copycats of copycats. The most famous killers to say they were influenced by it are a couple, Benjamin Darras and Sarah Edmondson. They took acid and watched the movie over and over and went on their own killing spree the next day. I've never done acid, but does that make sense?
No, it really, I can think, I haven't taken acid since I was a kid, but I can't think of anything I would rather do less than be tripping and seeing blood in people's guts fall over the place. Yeah. There have been other murders, at least 10, maybe 12 murders linked to natural-born killers. But the next one's borderline because it was really more of a copycat outfit than an actual motive, but, close enough for Hollywood. Most copycats kill victims they don't know, but the 1996 horror film Scream was based in part on the real-life murders of 5 Gainesville, Florida kids.
What makes you think I have a girlfriend?
I know you do. I'm right outside her bathroom door. You hang up on me and I'll cut through your neck until I feel bone. Do you want to die tonight, Cece? I'm going to slit your eyelids in half so you don't blink when I stab you in the face.
The killer in the movie, the character Ghostface, knew the 5 girls he stabbed to death. In this case, a 24-year-old Belgian guy named Thierry Jaradin went after his 15-year-old neighbor when she wouldn't go out with him, which, we can all relate. In the movie, the killer wears a black robe and a Scream mask based on the Edvard Munch painting. Jaradin put on a Scream costume and grabbed 2 big knives and stabbed this poor girl 30 times.
Jack the Ripper, and not the original, a copycat 120 years later. In 2008, Derek Brown was convicted of murdering 2 women despite neither of their bodies being found. Brown's victims were in the Whitechapel area of East London where Jack the Ripper had carried out 5 of his murders. Brown murdered a 29-year-old street vendor, and like Jack the Ripper, he also murdered a 26-year-old prostitute. He was caught and sentenced to 30 years in prison for the murders. Police linked him to 6 unsolved sexual assaults and think he was on his way to becoming a serial killer before they got him.
The Matrix inspired some fans to wear long black trench coats and sunglasses like Neo, of course, Keanu Reeves. But to me, that stuff seems more like cosplay. In September of 2002, Vadim Mesige murdered his landlord in California because he thought he was in an actual real-life Matrix. But again, that doesn't really explain anything. Same fall, and again, Lee Boyd, I think it was Lee Malmo Boyd, one of the Beltway snipers who killed 10 people in 2002, had made lots of Matrix sketches in prison, but I'm not sure I'm buying that one either. Then in February 2003, a Virginian guy named Joshua Cook said he lived in the Matrix when he murdered his parents. In 2002 in Ohio, Tonda Lynn Ansley was convinced that her landlord was involved in a conspiracy theory to brainwash her, so she shot him. Again, not sure about the Neo connection, but I guess you'd have to ask them.
Yeah. Mark Andrew Twitchell was inspired by the show Dexter, which I watched. It was kind of good. He was an independent Canadian filmmaker with 3 credits. 2 of them were movies about him being a serial killer. He said he was inspired by the TV show Dexter. His 3rd screen credit was a short film he made about a vigilante serial killer. He pretended to be a woman online and lured his first victim to a garage and beat him to death. But technically he was only a wannabe because he got caught before he could kill again. In 2011, he got life in prison.
John Hinckley Jr., the guy who tried to kill Ronald Reagan in 1981 to get Jodie Foster's attention, which he did, he said he was influenced by Taxi Driver, the great Scorsese movie from '76, starring Robert De Niro as Travis Bickle.
You talking to me? You talking to me? Well, then who the hell else are you talking to? Talking to me? Well, I'm the only one here. Who the fuck do you think you're talking to?
The attempt on Reagan changed the way presidents were protected. Manpower was added to the Secret Service and new protocols were developed at public stops. It's sort of like the Tylenol thing, but for stopping assassinations on presidents. Yeah. Of course, many of the school shooters were copycats too, but we don't do school shooters. Charles Manson, Ted Bundy, or Richard Ramirez?
Kill, fuck, marry. Let us know.
Let us know. So please email us at tabootreasures@evocreative.com or
message us at Instagram or TikTok.
So let's get to some serial killer love.
So most people have heard or seen some examples of this, but there's a thing called hybristophilia, and it's a term used to describe people who fall in love with prisoners. And people who study these sorts of things have come up with some interesting ideas about the causes. So we put together a few of the zillions of them that women fall in love with murderers and serial killers, or as it's nicknamed, and this is a real thing, being gay for the stay.
Some women believe they can change a man as cruel and as powerful as a serial killer. This is apparently where the saying, men want women to stay the same and women want men to change, came from. Some women see the little boy that the killer once was and seek to nurture him. I wonder how many women tried that with Hitler. Some of the women wanted to share in the media spotlight or get a book deal or a movie deal. I guess it's not the worst thing you can do to get attention.
Hardly. And then there's the perfect boyfriend thing. So from her perspective, she knows where he is at all times. She can feel loved without having to deal with any of the tedious day-to-day relationship stuff like actually going to a movie or having a dog or anything. There's no laundry to do, no cooking, and no accountability. She can basically do whatever she wants when she's not visiting him. So I guess when you look at it that way, it does sound pretty good, except for the not having a dog part. That would suck.
Yeah, we got to have dogs. If there was anything shocking left in the world, it's shocking to think of how many women have fallen in love with serial killers in prison. Here's a few high-profile examples. You could say that Charles Manson's family is the most well-known modern-day example of hybristophilia because of all the women in his cult. But they were killers too. He did have plenty of fangirls during his time in prison.
Ted Bundy did too. He had dozens of women jamming the courtrooms during his trial, and he got hundreds of letters in jail. And he actually proposed to a woman named Carol Boone while she was on the witness stand during his trial, but it gets even better. She married him while he was in prison and gave birth to his daughter. And then in interviews, she said he had a playful, silly side, and they called each other Bubbles. God.
Women sent love letters, money, and other gifts to Jeffrey Dahmer while he was in prison. That's some pretty hardcore hybristophilia, considering he was gay and a cannibal. He didn't even like women. Known as the Night Stalker, Richard Ramirez was a Satanist who killed 13 people. Finally, one of these guys who at least had a different God than Jesus. Anyway, he had fans who wrote him letters and visited him in jail. Dorian Loy, a totally normal woman, married him in San Quentin prison on October 3rd in 1996.
And then in 2009, she found out he'd been convicted of raping and murdering a 9-year-old girl, so she stopped coming to prison to see him. Though even then, she never legally filed for divorce. I don't know what that means, but maybe, maybe 13 victims was just right and 14 was one too many.
Well, maybe it's because it was a kid, huh? Who knows? You never know. We don't want to be sexist and not give men credit for being just as fucked up as women. Hybristophilia affects men too. It's just not as prevalent. Most of the examples we found weren't as colorful as the women, but there's a pretty long list of men who loved women that would have killed them if they weren't in jail.
The next section we mentioned in the introduction, it's called Murderabilia, and this is a real thing. These are things I guess you'd call mementos of the killers. We put together a list of some of the interesting ones.
Jeffrey Dahmer, who we spoke about, who murdered and dismembered 17 boys.
Ooh, can I tell my favorite Jeffrey Dahmer joke?
Of course you can.
Okay. So Jeffrey Dahmer's mom comes over for dinner, and they're at the dinner table, and they're eating, and she says, Jeffrey, I don't really like your neighbors. And he says, try the vegetables.
Anyway, one of his signed paychecks from the Ambrosia Chocolate Factory sold for $15,000 on a Murderabilia website. Also, John Wayne Gacy was a serial killer that was responsible for the deaths of at least 33 people. He spent 14 years on death row before he was executed in 1994, and during that time, they let him paint many, many pictures. Some of them have sold for up to $20,000. Now, was he allowed to keep that money?
No. Remember we talked about David Berkowitz,
right,
the Son of Sam in New York in the 70s.
Yeah.
And he killed, I think, 8 people, and the whole city shut down. I mean,
because he was talking to his dog.
Yes, his dog.
Actually, some dog. It wasn't his dog.
No, it was his neighbor's dog named Sam.
Yeah.
Told him to kill people, which, today isn't that unusual for today's podcast. But, yeah, he was offered money for his life rights for books and movies and all that.
Right.
And they actually wrote a law called the Son of Sam Law to prevent people from profiting from there.
So they shut it down.
Yep.
Yeah. It's interesting. Nothing on the website of his was didn't give me a murder boner.
No, that's the greatest expression I've ever heard. Last on the list of murderabilia that's actually sold is a more obscure guy. His name was Albert Fish, was convicted of murdering 3 children, although they thought it could be a lot more. His autograph surprisingly sold online for $30,000. If you want to look at some examples of murderabilia you can actually buy right now, there's a website called supernaut.com that we found that lists a whole bunch of them. Most of it's news articles and letters, but here's some of the weirder stuff they have.
Yeah, so there's a 3-page handwritten letter by Ted Bundy dated November 15th, 1986, which he wrote to a friend and former employee of both he and his wife, Carol Boone. The letter is hand-signed. Get it? Ready? Peace, Ted. It's fucking ironic. It includes the original mailing envelope from death row, postmarked November 17th, 1986, which has been completely penned by Bundy and hand-signed T. Bundy. It's listed for $4,700. And then we have, of course, the Night Stalker. From 1984 to 1985, Richard Ramirez murdered at least 14 people. They're selling his death row lamp with box and cord, and it's listed for $6,500.
Talk about random. A lamp.
Yeah.
With that's And they still have the box for it on death row.
And cord, yeah.
Okay.
I guess if you need a lamp, you can buy that one.
That'd be kind of cool, actually. Or would it be? Next is Eileen Wuornos, who we mentioned earlier. She's the serial killing prostitute in Florida who the movie Monster was based on. A pair of sneakers she wore on death row is listed at $8,500, which, if any of you heard our episode called Heavenly Sneakers, that actually seems like a pretty good deal, doesn't it?
If we had any money for this show, we would have bought some of this weird shit.
No doubt. Yeah. Next one is Robert Burdella, who we did mention before because who has the time? There's just too many of these guys. But he kidnapped, raped, tortured, and murdered at least 6 young men. But we have to mention him now because talk about weird shit. An item of his is listed for $22,000 on the Supernaut website. You ready? It's stained mattress fabric.
I don't know what it's stained with, and I don't want to know. This one's great because it's so random. It's an autographed TV with shipping box for $30,000 signed by none other than Charles Manson. Am I the only person wonder why he would sign an autograph a TV?
I don't know, but a signed TV is definitely better than a lamp.
Definitely a lot more expensive than a lamp.
Yeah.
What's the cheapest thing we could have bought? $4,700? Nah.
Yeah, that would have been a Ted Bundy letter, which is actually, it seemed like good value, I guess.
This is a different kind of murderabilia, the kind collected by the killers themselves. But before we get into what they kept, we wanted to give a mention to where the fuck was the press coverage on this guy award, to a guy named Joe Ray Matheny. Matheny's friends described him as a gentle giant, and they were half right. They got him for 5 serial killings, although after his death in jail, they figured him for 8 more.
He cooked and ate his victims, which isn't exactly normal, but it also isn't the worst thing some of today's killers have done. No. What gets this guy a gold star is he didn't eat all of the victims he cooked. He saved some of them for sandwiches that he sold from a roadside stand. That's some next level Sweeney Todd shit. The people ate people.
People who ate people.
Okay, now we're going to get onto the list of some stuff serial killers have collected from their victims and crime scenes.
So John Edward Robinson was a scam artist, embezzler, and a forger. But his most famous title was the Internet's first serial killer because he lured his victims via chat rooms. Robinson didn't collect items from his victims, but he did kidnap one victim's 4-month-old daughter.
Collectible.
Well, that's a collectible. Lisa Stacy was down on her luck and staying at a women's shelter in Kansas City when she met Robinson in 1985. He offered her and her 4-month-old daughter a place to stay, and soon enough, Stacy disappeared without a trace. Robinson kept the baby for a little while, but that's not even the weird part. He gave the kid to his brother and sister-in-law, and they raised her as if she were their own. Meanwhile, they apparently didn't think to ask Robinson where he got the kid in the first place, which kind of seems totally normal.
The next guy on the list is also pretty weird, but a lot less dark. Well, except for the fact that he killed people. On its surface, you think collecting camping gear seems like a pretty innocuous hobby, but the way that Ivan Milat collected it was a little different. Between 1989 and 1992, he kidnapped, assaulted, robbed, and murdered at least 2 men and 5 women in New South Wales. When he was caught, he showed police his Aladdin's cave, as he called it, of camping gear. Sleeping bags, portable stove, canteens, you name it. What's not clear is if he was killing to get this stuff or just taking it as trophies, but either way, he gets points for originality.
Yeah, the next one's gross. Go ahead.
Oh, God. So this Indonesian serial killer named Ahmad Suraji killed 42 girls and women between 1986 and 96. His 3 wives helped him cover up the crimes until they finally caught him and executed him by firing squad in 2008. But we saved the best. This is so gross. We saved the best for last, but he believed that the saliva of his victims gave him special powers. So after he strangled a woman to death, he'd drain their saliva and drink it. Who the fuck thinks of that?
Yummy.
God.
All right, we're getting into the really weird ones now.
Right, because that wasn't weird.
Yeah, a guy named Eddie Leonsky wished he could sing better, so instead of getting singing lessons, in 1942 he choked 3 women to death so he could collect their voices. He's known as the Singing Strangler. So maybe it worked. I wonder if we can find him on Spotify.
It must have worked if they gave him the nickname. No, they didn't say he was the good singings.
That's true, yeah. A foot fetish is pretty tame by fetish standards, but actually keeping the foot separate from the person is kind of fucked up. Jerome Brudos was caught after strangling 4 women. He got his nickname the Shoe Fetish Slayer. Sounds like a metal band, Shoe Fetish Slayer. When he told the cops that he kept the left foot of the murder victim and used it to model shoes.
So he wasn't into feet, he was into shoes.
Yeah, he was into
he
shoes.
Just forgot to take the feet out.
And he needed to put something on them, so feet made sense. He was just into, yeah. They also found 2 pair of amputated breasts that Brudos used as paperweights.
That's really normal.
While he was in jail, he collected piles and piles of women's shoe catalogs, which he called his substitute for pornography. Should have thought of that before the serial killing thing. He could have just jerked off the shoe magazines.
Apparently
not.
So the next one's Charles Albright, who was known as the Dallas Ripper or the Eyeball Killer. Guess why? They only got him for 1 murder, but they were pretty sure he killed at least 3 women in Dallas in the early 90s. All 3 victims, he shot them in the face and the head, but he'd gouge out their eyes because that was his souvenirs. He collected eyes.
One of our rock stars.
Yeah, Jeffrey Dahmer. So in September of 1988, his grandmother asked him to move out of her house for 2 reasons. 1, he was always bringing young men home late at night. And 2, she couldn't take the foul smell coming from the garage and basement.
Ouch.
Well, why she didn't put 2 and 2 together, who knows? But to be fair, what grandmother wants to believe her grandson murdered and dismantled 17 people?
A Jewish grandmother would be okay with it.
Actually, one of my grandmothers definitely wouldn't have been, but the other one?
Yeah, maybe. Not my boy. He wouldn't do that. But Dahmer wasn't just a murderer. He had sex with the corpses of the boys he murdered, and he kept trophies, genitals preserved in acetone, heads and skulls. He told the police he built an altar in his house made of human body parts. When they asked him who the altar was dedicated to, he said, myself. It was a place I could feel at home, not at Grandma's house. Fortunately for the rest of us, he was murdered in prison in 1994.
Why is this getting funnier?
I know.
Next up, heads. Ted Bundy. As handsome as he was for a serial killer and as famous as he became, there's some details about Ted Bundy you have to hear. You might know some of them, but here's a partial list of stuff he did and the things he collected from at least 36 women he killed.
So basically, after he killed 12 of them, he raped them. Does it count as rape if they were dead? There's a term for that.
Necrophilia.
Yeah. He sawed off their heads with a hacksaw and kept them in his apartment. After he was caught, he told the police that after he killed his victims, he put makeup on their faces and washed their hair. He says if you got the time, they can be whatever you want them to be. And we're not laughing at the victims. We're just laughing at how crazy this shit is.
No, in fact, we'll just go ahead and say that, if there are any survivors of these horrible crimes, it's what we do. Sorry. No. Yeah. It's what we do. Sorry.
And now for the worst motherfucker on our list. This guy takes the cake and everything else.
This is some elite shit. He collected a little bit of everything. This is the most well-renowned collector of trophies. It's Edward Theodore Gain. Gain was only ever charged with 2 murders, but presumably he didn't get this stuff at a garage sale. When he was caught, he said he'd gotten it from the bodies of women who reminded him of his mother that he dug up in graveyards. He didn't mention how he knew what they looked like, but we believe him 100%. So here's part of his impressive list. 4 noses.
9 masks made of human skin.
bowls created from human skulls.
10 female heads with scalp and top portion of skull removed.
This is one of our favorites. Chair seats covered in human skin.
Yeah. One of his victims, Mary Hogan's head in a paper bag.
He put another woman's head in a burlap sack. Anyway, you do the next one because you've earned it.
Oh, God. No, dude. You got to do it with me. Let's do it like it's Christmas.
What are you talking about?
All right, here we go. Ready?
Okay.
Vulvas in a shoebox.
Oh, my God. Skulls perched on his bedpost.
Refrigerated human organs. And a window shade made of human lips.
Oh, my God. In the world of memorabilia, collectors buy and trade objects related to serial killings and killers. Newspaper clippings, artwork, letters, articles of clothing, that sort of thing.
But what if you could get a hold of some of the stuff the killers collected themselves, especially the body parts? What happened to all the skulls and the teeth and the other bits and pieces of the victims?
And here's where we ask, what would a shoe with a foot still in it or a box of vulvas be worth to a collector? And what kind of collector would want it in their collection?
At the end of our podcast, we usually ask if you have a lead or a clue on any of the collectibles of the day. We're going to guess that you don't have a line on any of the eyeballs and ashtray breasts. But if you do, we promise not to tell. So thanks for listening to this week's episode of Taboo Treasures. And if you have the guts to tell us you have one of those creepy collectibles, please email us at tabootreasures@evocreative.com or message us at Taboo Treasures on Instagram and TikTok.
From the real origin of Barbie to the creepy stuff serial killers collect, we explore the stories behind the stories that no one else is talking about.
Thanks for listening, and please rate us and review us on Apple Podcasts, and don't forget to hit the like button. Goodbye. From EVO, Taboo Treasures is produced by Bruce Whitkin and Jeff Levine. Executive producer Brandon Morgan. Music by the Lonely Bulls.